No other artists in the Renaissance really showed that much interest in the natural world and the surrounding world.
Leonardo da Vinci's genius was not a miracle. It was a weapon. For 500 years, we have been fed a lie about the painter of the Mona Lisa. The most shocking fact is that his art was a distraction from his real clandestine work.
What starts as a portrait, a representation of a woman, turns into something quite different. It turns into a kind of philosophical meditation on all his intellectual concerns.
Now, for the first time ever, scientists have sequenced his complete DNA, and the genetic code confirms our darkest suspicions. It reveals a biological anomaly, a hidden ability that allowed him to conduct experiments so dangerous, so far beyond the pale, that history itself was rewritten to keep them secret. Chasing a shadow. You see, his original burial at the chapel of Saint Florentin in France's Loire Valley should have been a sacred site. Instead, history wiped it from the map. During the chaos of the French Revolution, the chapel was demolished, its stones scattered, its memory erased. While whispers and old tales suggested his bones were moved to the nearby Saint Hubert Chapel, no one could ever prove it. The trail had gone cold. For scientists, it was an impossible challenge. How do you get the DNA of a man who died half a millennium ago when his very remains have vanished? What many overlooked is that the mystery started long before his passing. Leonardo's birth in the small Tuscan town of Anciano was, to put it mildly, complicated. He was born out of wedlock, the son of a respected lawyer, Ser Piero da Vinci, and a peasant girl named Caterina, who was only 15 years old. The thing nobody tells you is that Caterina was practically a phantom herself. Research suggests she was an orphan, a young woman with no last name, no documented family, and no trail to follow. She appeared in the historical record just long enough to give birth to a genius before disappearing again, leaving Leonardo as her only mark on history. At just 5 years old, Leonardo was taken from his mother to live with his father's family. This single decision, while common at the time, severed half of his genetic story from the history books. All that remained was his father's side. But even that path was a labyrinth stretching across centuries. The man who filled thousands of pages in his secret notebooks with mirrored text, hiding his work from the world, seemed destined to remain a biological enigma forever. His mind gave us designs for bicycles, scuba gear, and even a robotic knight, all drawn from his obsessive study of the world around him. Yet the code that built that mind seemed lost. But some people refused to let a mystery lie. For decades, historians Alessandro Vessosi and Agnesi Sabato dedicated their lives to solving this 690-year-old cold case. They weren't just looking for a few documents, they were rebuilding an entire family tree from its very roots in 1331. They dove headfirst into dusty archives, poring over crumbling parish records, ancient tax documents, and faded marriage certificates. They tracked down every lead, hunting for the Da Vinci name as it branched out over 21 generations and 5 distinct family lines. Many people are crazy about genealogy, but this was a quest on an entirely different level. After more than a decade of relentless work, they found it. A breakthrough. They discovered that Leonardo's bloodline had not vanished. It had survived. The researchers identified 14 living male descendants, ordinary men living quiet lives across Italy. They were office workers, pastry chefs, blacksmiths, and even one artist, none of whom had any idea they carried the living legacy of the ultimate Renaissance man. Each one of these men carried the same Y chromosome that had been passed down, almost unchanged, from father to son for 25 generations. You see, the Y chromosome is a biological time capsule, a direct genetic link stretching all the way back to Leonardo himself. The impossible puzzle was solved. They didn't need his bones. They had his living blood. But finding the descendants was only the beginning of the story. The genetic revelation. With access to Leonardo's living DNA, the real work began. The Leonardo da Vinci DNA project was launched with an ambition that bordered on science fiction. The plan was not just to sequence his genome, but to use that code to physically reconstruct his face in a perfect three-dimensional image. Scientists were about to look into the eyes of a man who had been dead for 500 years. The genetic material, carefully extracted from his relatives, was run through the most advanced sequencing technology on the planet. For the first time, researchers could read the very code that built Leonardo's extraordinary mind. But they weren't just looking for his hair or eye color. They were hunting for the source of his genius. They believed the secrets to his legendary visual acuity, his almost supernatural ability to see the world with more detail and clarity than any human before him, were hidden right there in his genes. The most shocking fact is that they were right. As the data came in, a pattern emerged. They found specific genetic markers, consistently appearing, linked to enhanced cognitive abilities and superior visual processing. It was the biological explanation for how he could draw a perfect freehand circle or capture the microscopic veins on a leaf. What many overlooked was the possibility of something even stranger. The DNA analysis pointed to a high probability of synesthesia, a rare neurological trait where the senses get cross-wired. This could explain his revolutionary approach to everything. In his private notebooks, Leonardo described hearing colors and seeing sounds. He saw mathematical formulas as physical shapes he could almost touch. It wasn't just artistic expression, it was his biological reality. This genetic gift allowed him to connect ideas from completely different fields, art, anatomy, engineering, in ways no one else could. And you can see this everywhere in his work. He saw the swirling motion of water and used it to understand the flow of human hair. He studied the wings of a bat to design a flying machine. For Leonardo, everything was connected. Perhaps the most fascinating discovery was the genetic evidence for his famous mirror writing. For centuries, everyone assumed he wrote backwards as a code to protect his research. But the DNA suggests it may not have been a choice. It was likely the natural output of his uniquely wired brain, a brain that was profoundly ambidextrous. The genes also showed markers for incredible neuroplasticity. This meant his brain stayed young and adaptable his entire life, forging new connections and learning at a rapid pace even into his 60s, an age when most minds begin to slow down. But while the secrets of his mind were stunning, the code held even bigger surprises about his physical body. The DNA phenotyping began to build a picture of the man, and it was not the image we all know. Genetic markers revealed that Leonardo almost certainly had heterochromia, two different colored eyes. This condition, found in less than 1% of people, may have been his secret weapon, giving him unparalleled depth perception. The model suggested one eye was brown, the other a striking green. The analysis also confirmed his left-handedness, but paired it with genes for exceptional fine motor control, explaining his legendary precision. Then came the shocker, his height. Historical accounts describe him as average, but his DNA told a different story. He likely stood nearly 6 feet tall, a giant for the 15th century, where the average man was lucky to clear 5 feet 5 inches. This physical presence would have been just as commanding as his intellect. The secrets just kept coming, each one more unbelievable than the last. A dangerous truth. As scientists dug deeper into Leonardo's DNA, they found a breadcrumb trail, a genetic clue that led them somewhere no one ever expected, a secret archive hidden deep beneath the Vatican. It turns out, the genetic markers for Leonardo's enhanced memory and pattern recognition matched anomalies found on a set of documents the Catholic Church had tried to erase from history for 500 years. These weren't sketches of flying machines or anatomical drawings. They were Leonardo's most dangerous writings, detailing his experiments into the very nature of human consciousness. You see, in 1523, just 4 years after Leonardo's passing, a high-ranking cardinal named Giuseppe Borelli ordered these papers to be sealed in a lead-lined chest and buried. The church was terrified. What Leonardo had discovered was so profound, so earth-shattering, it threatened to unravel the very foundations of faith and the concept of the human soul. For half a millennium, they remained locked away. But the DNA evidence from his living descendants allowed researchers to finally authenticate the pages. The genetic traces left on the parchment were a perfect match. The documents described something straight out of a horror story. Leonardo, using his unparalleled powers of observation, had been systematically studying individuals in their final moments. He recorded what he called departure patterns, consistent, subtle changes in facial expressions, breathing, and even the dilation of the pupils as life faded. But he didn't stop at observation. The thing nobody tells you is that Leonardo had developed a way to briefly restart the heart and lungs of the recently deceased. He wasn't trying to bring people back to life. He was studying the transition, the veil between life and what comes next, over and over again. What he found was explosive. The church documents reveal that many of the subjects he temporarily revived reported the exact same experiences. They spoke of floating above their own bodies, of moving through walls, and of encountering beings made of pure light. Leonardo, with his scientific mind, didn't see this as a religious miracle. He saw it as data. His genetic gift for compartmentalized thinking, another trait found in his DNA, allowed him to separate emotion from his work. He could study the end of life with the cold, detached curiosity of a biologist, free from the fear and superstition that gripped the rest of the world. This made him incredibly effective, but also, in the eyes of the church, incredibly dangerous. The truth about his experiments came out when local priests began reporting that newly filled graves were being disturbed. An investigation led straight to Leonardo, who had been exhuming bodies to continue his studies. The scandal was enormous and could have led to him facing the ultimate penalty for heresy. But he was too powerful, his patrons too influential. So a deal was struck. The church would condemn his methods publicly, but secretly preserve his forbidden research. They knew even then that what he had discovered was too important to destroy. The DNA proved it all. It wasn't just a story, it was real. He had unlocked one of life's greatest mysteries, but his DNA held another secret. A body built to survive. Leonardo's bizarre physical traits and his forbidden research were just pieces of a much larger puzzle. The most shocking fact was yet to come, hidden in the genetic markers that governed his immune system. These genes didn't just make him healthy, they made him almost superhuman, a survivor in an age of rampant disease. During the plague outbreaks that swept through Renaissance Italy, leaving millions of casualties in their wake, Leonardo walked among the sick, completely untouched. His DNA finally revealed why. His genetic code contained a set of incredibly rare mutations that gave him a natural resistance to the bacteria that caused the Black Death. But Leonardo didn't just survive, he studied. The DNA evidence led researchers to another set of lost documents, this time in a forgotten Milanese monastery, his plague journals. In these pages, he was revealed to be Europe's first true epidemiologist, hundreds of years ahead of his time. Using his genetically enhanced pattern recognition, he mapped the spread of the plague through cities, tracking its transmission routes with an accuracy that stuns modern scientists. He remembered thousands of individual cases, connecting them in a way no one else could. To put it mildly, his methods were extreme. The journals describe how he deliberately exposed himself to the disease, using his own immunity as a shield to study how it was transmitted. What many overlooked was another of his secret genetic gifts: enhanced chemoreception. His DNA suggests he could literally smell the chemical changes in a person's body when they were sick. He could identify plague carriers days before they showed any visible symptoms. But his greatest discovery came from studying the survivors. He collected blood samples, performing primitive analyses that anticipated modern science by centuries. He was the first to document the principle of acquired immunity, the idea that surviving a disease makes you resistant to it in the future. He even developed the world's first vaccination protocols, using weakened plague material to immunize the healthy. The authorities thought he was crazy, a heretic peddling dangerous ideas. But when his predictions about the plague's spread came true, they secretly started using his methods to contain outbreaks. This wasn't a one-time event. His journals show he systematically studied cholera, typhus, and smallpox, using his own body as a laboratory. His genes for accelerated wound healing and rapid detoxification made him the perfect biological machine for this kind of dangerous research. the DNA told the full story. His long life of 67 years wasn't luck. It was a biological advantage. When the full genetic picture came together, the truth was undeniable. Leonardo da Vinci was a biological perfect storm. The combination of his visual processing, immune function, synesthesia, and enhanced memory occurs in less than 1 in 10 million people. His DNA showed he had delayed brain aging, superior dopamine regulation for motivation, and even required less sleep. He was literally built differently. Could humanity engineer another Da Vinci? And if we could, should we? Let us know your thoughts below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more secrets from history.